Hey everyone, welcome back to Chainlink Q&A. I'm here today with Tom from metacarbon, also known as Tokenizer of Carbon, and we are here to discuss metacarbon and how it's helping brands engage their audience on the topic of climate change. So welcome, Tom. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me here today.
Awesome. Yeah, we're accompanied by Harris. You want to say hi, Harris?
Hey
Hi,
guys.
Harris.
And yeah, we're super excited to hear a little bit more about what metacarbon is doing. It sounds like you're impacting a lot of areas and making a greener world. So let's hear about it. What is metacarbon and what are you all building?
Great. Well, metacarbon is a platform for the digital origination of carbon offsets. We digitally originate carbon mostly from forestry projects around the world, bring in a lot of high quality data in that digitization process. And then we can create tokens, mostly non-fungible tokens. In theory, we could do fungible baskets as well, but we focus on non-fungible. And we can also make it available through an API for integrations, for example, at point of sale, if you wanted to offset the shipping associated with this sale of sneakers, or if you wanted to offset the transportation associated with a food delivery, we can help you with that either by providing an NFT that has several kilograms of carbon embedded within it as an offset, or through an API in a more traditional Web 2 fashion.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing a little bit more about that. And I know when we were talking, prior to starting the recording, you wanted to share a little bit about some different types of things that you're all building at metacarbon. So maybe we can start with the carbon types and resources. I think that a lot of our viewers may not be super familiar with that. So if you maybe could dive into what different carbon types there are, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, it might be worth talking a little bit about the whys, why we're doing this and what it's all about. And I
Perfect.
think it's important to remember that there are a lot of brands out there that are trying to engage different kinds of audiences, and you have to go to where the audience is, right? To some degree, there's a lot of desire to connect with Gen Z and millennials, and both of these demographics are very involved with blockchain. Many of them collect NFTs. They're digital natives. And so we thought that putting carbon offsetting into a more digital native environment would engage them more. There's a little bit of statistics about that. 84% of millennials say they'd rather support brands that have strong values and offer transparency. And I'm sure you guys have heard the word transparency and blockchain in the same sentence more times than you can count. So there's a little bit of that. And the other thing is, we believe that in order to address climate change, we need everybody to participate, every government, every individual, every corporation, every investor. And NFTs are really very much about building community. So again, we see this as a really interesting opportunity to engage an audience. With impact-oriented NFTs, they can be fun, and there's a lot of data available to make them transparent and measurable. But that's one of the challenges. How do you measure impact? And again, if your community is looking to offset carbon, and you can include the person who's online purchasing a product as well as the person who's in a forestry project somewhere in the world actually planting trees or measuring the capture of carbon and increase of biomass, that community can build more trust and more transparency as well. I often get asked, why blockchain and carbon? And when you think about carbon offsetting, the suppliers of carbon offsets are organizations, projects around the world that are sequestering carbon. In our case, we work mostly with forestry projects. So these are projects that are protecting forests or replanting forests. And these are distributed around the world. People are trying to gather data from satellite imagery, from drones, from measuring tree heights, lots of different data sources, and then transacting in a trustless environment. I'm a brand in the United States or Europe, and I'm buying carbon offsets from a project in Latin America or Africa, and I don't know them. And all of these things add up to just a perfect environment for blockchain. Distributed, trustless, millions of actors, financial transactions, etc. So that's sort of the background for what we're doing. And maybe we can, talk about it a little bit more. Maybe with that, you guys have some questions.
Yeah, totally, Tom. I think you bring up a really interesting story here in terms of this intersection of this macro environment we're working in, obviously, and just the environment alone, but like the macro environment also from like a data rich environment perspective as well, and how this cocktail of data and opportunity, it presents a really fascinating opportunity, sorry to say it again, but to really inspire a sustainable focused push within the blockchain ecosystem. So I think, with what you were just sharing there, a great explanation around what's happening and what's available to take action. I'm curious from your perspective, how are you trying to now inspire people in a sustainable first way with blockchain developments that are coming around?
Well, one of the first things that I'm trying to do is clear up some of the misconceptions about blockchain in general and the carbon footprint of blockchain overall, or of specific blockchains in particular, because I think there's really a huge misunderstanding. But I really think it's important to remember that there's no other industry that I can think of that has taken the climate change challenge and the carbon footprint challenge as seriously as the Web3 community and addressed it so quickly. I mean, obviously, blockchain, Web3, crypto has done everything quickly, but they've really worked hard to reduce carbon footprint, to measure carbon footprint, to offer transparency. And I can't say that about any other industry that I know, but Web3 has really made an effort, and we have a lot of distance left to go. But some blockchains are very efficient. If you look at Solana, if you look at Polygon, both of them are able to mint NFTs for on the order of about the energy required for 2 Google searches. So that it's very small. We're using more electricity and having a greater carbon footprint by leaving our laptops on for the day, or by eating a steak at night, than by issuing an NFT. The other day, I got some material in the mail from a company looking to raise money. I think it was like Wildlife Works or some company that was looking to raise capital for carbon offsetting. And it came and it was beautiful, but it came in the mail. And I thought, well, they're pulping trees and printing and shipping, and that piece of mail probably came on an airplane before it was delivered by a car. So the carbon footprint associated with traditional ways of doing things is ignored frequently. And so we can't just look at Bitcoin in a vacuum. It's got to be in context. And again, we need to do everything in our power to reduce our carbon footprint, whether that is looking at what we eat, understanding how we travel, or selecting the blockchains that we want to develop against and interact with.
Yeah, that's really helpful for everybody to hear. And I think it's, super relevant to everyone watching. So thanks for explaining all of that and discussing the different aspects of blockchain and how it all intersects. So do you want to maybe share a little bit more on the educational side for our community about carbon types and maybe some other aspects that they may not be as familiar with?
Sure. Let's jump in quickly and talk about some of the types of carbon that people should be thinking about. Again, I'm using carbon to engage an audience, and to some degree, that's an educational process. So if you're out there doing marketing or doing Web3 development and you want to communicate stuff about carbon, it's good to understand a little bit about the underlying carbon markets and things. I tried to simplify this a lot to make it more interesting, but there's different kinds of carbon offsets. There are carbon removals and there are carbon avoidance. And from a forestry perspective, it's pretty simple. Are you planting trees, or are you making sure that trees aren't cut down? And the price of carbon differs depending on what you're doing. Another kind of carbon project would be methane capture. And you can capture methane that is leaked out of coal mines, gas wells and oil wells, landfills. If you drive by a landfill, you see those tubes coming up. They're letting gas out because as everything biodegrades in the landfill, it produces methane, which is a super powerful greenhouse gas. And if you want to be as environmentally friendly as possible, and you're operating a landfill, you want to capture that methane and then use it to generate energy. You can create green energy, but also you're preventing that from escaping. So in that case, you're avoiding and sequestering carbon. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. Interesting thing, I had a request from a hemp farm to tokenize plots of hemp, because hemp, when it grows, sequesters a very large amount of carbon in the root ball, and it can be measured. And so there's different projects. We're doing a project in Cartagena, Colombia, wonderful city on the north coast of South America, restoring mangrove forests, which help prevent flooding and help preserve biodiversity. So there's so much that you could communicate, but a lot of it is about having the data necessary to make it transparent and believable to your customers, whether they're retail customers or they're customers in the metaverse. Another quick thing to know, carbon offsets can be judged by their quality and their and whether or not they're real, based to some degree on what registry has approved them for sale. The largest registry in the world is Vera. There's another registry that's very large called Gold Standard, which is very European oriented. And these organizations set standards for how do you do a carbon project. What do you need to measure if you're going to capture the methane from a landfill? What do you need to measure if you're going to replant trees to prove to the corporations and individuals who are buying your carbon offsets that they're legitimate? So they have these registries, and connecting the registries to blockchain and Web3 is really where we operate. That I call that a carbon bridge. And we take those offsets that are in the registries and we tokenize them. And there's a whole bunch of these registries, which are great. Some of these are more oriented on Web3. One like Dovu is tokenizing carbon offsets from European farms. And then within the carbon offsets, there's all kinds of data. Where did the carbon offset get created? What year was it done? Who did the development of the project, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of data. Anyone that has interest in learning more about this, they're welcome to reach out to me. I don't need to go into too much detail, but to bring it back to Web3, I think there's an important distinction here on what kinds of tokens can be generated. So fungible, non-fungible, and semi-fungible. We create non-fungible tokens because it's my belief that every ton of carbon is different. But it is true that if you buy a carbon offset from the same forestry project, planting the same kinds of trees in the same year, they're sort of the same, and we could trade them, versus a methane capture carbon offset versus a forestry carbon offset, which have different pricing. So that would be the 1155 semi-fungible. You set them up around a specific project in a specific vintage, and then you can create a lot of tokens within that area. And then the ERC20 tokens are like baskets. So there's a specification for what airlines can use to offset international carbon emissions from international flights. It's called CORSIA. And if you wanted to take a whole bunch of NFTs that represent carbon offsets that meet the CORSIA standards, you could put them into a fungible basket like a CORSIA token. And those are the different kinds of tokens. One thing to keep in mind is retired versus non-retired. I can buy a carbon offset and trade it and sell it to you for 20 bucks. And then you could use it to retire your carbon footprint, a flight that you took, a meal that you ate, or a corporation could buy it to offset their supply chain or their operations. So that's retired, tradable, commodity, like a bushel of corn. And then when you retire it, it's like eating the corn. It's gone. We create collectibles. Our carbon offsets are all based on endangered animals. So they have different kinds of NFT style traits. How endangered are they? Where are they from? What background do they have? Et cetera. But there's a lot of these that are just utilities. And I think there's so much talk about Bored Apes, but there's really a lot of exciting stuff happening in the world of NFTs around utility tokens. And in the case of carbon offsetting and environmental management, I think NFTs are real powerful. And then the last thing is real estate. As I said, hemp farms have requested that we tokenize hectares of hemp or acres of hemp and sell them. And then if you buy that NFT, you would get the carbon offsets that 1 hectare produces every year. You could sell them, or you could use them to offset your own carbon footprint. So those are all the building blocks. You can remove the slide now, but those are all the building blocks that I think our audience should be considering as they build NFTs and Web3 solutions and use Web3 and other products to engage audiences and brands. They can think about all of those different things. How do they fit? How do you connect the products and the brands back to the actual carbon offsets? And how do you use that for engagement? It's an engagement opportunity. It's a community building opportunity. And there's all this rich information, all these amazing photographs of animals that we love. Do you guys, by the way, my kids are into rabbits, monkeys, and unicorns. But, you know, I like dogs. I don't know if you guys have animals that you have some sort of affinity for other than like labradoodles or golden doodles.
Yeah, I do have one golden doodle, but in general, yes, tons. Big animal lover personally.
So what's an animal that you like?
I always loved cheetahs growing up and zebras because I have a Z in my name. So, you know, I related
so
there.
Zebras, not so endangered. Cheetah, endangered.
Yeah.
What about you, Harris?
Yeah, a lot of the aquatic stuff, like, you know, sea life and things like this. So
whales. We do a great turtle collection. We're doing a blue whale collection. Blue whales actually show up in the New York area. We're attending NFT NYC. And I'm in the process of trying to get them to offer blue whale NFTs to offset the carbon footprint of the participants in the conference.
Very cool.
So we can connect all of these things. Every brand somehow connects back to the environment.
Totally, Tom. And I think first of all, thank you for the big backdrop on this. And I think it dovetails very well into some of the stuff that you're doing and maybe you've been hinting at it here and there with these animals. You mind if we talk about Carbon Creatures a little bit? I'm curious to get a little bit more into the weeds on this.
Don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Like,
topic.
Yeah, let's hop into it. So can you give the audience a little bit of a flavor of, you know, what you've been working on there? You know, do you consider them impact NFTs? You know, how do you,
so let me see if I can bring up, there we go. Here's a few examples of our Carbon Creature NFT series. We've got a bunch of different NFTs, and this particular series has a number of endangered animals. We created this one ourselves. It was our first collection of NFTs. You can turn off the screen. I'm actually going to jump to another one because it starts to address some of the issues that I think are really important. Here's a different NFT that we've created. This collection is called the Action Bears Club, and it's actually on crypto.com, whereas the other one was Polygon and on OpenSea. But one of the things that's really important to us is transparency. So behind every NFT, we include a full audit. So you can click through your NFT, see how much carbon has been offset within it, and see actually in the registry a link back to the NFT so that you have traceability end to end. And you know that the money that you spent on that NFT is going where it should. It shows the percentage that's going to a charity, the percentage that's going to carbon offsets, which carbon offsets, and it shows the retirement certificates associated with them. Today, we do that in aggregate for a collection, but we'll be doing that on a one-to-one basis for individual NFTs in a new future release pretty soon. So I think that kind of stuff is important. And we hope that as more and more carbon offsetting becomes mainstream within the NFT and blockchain environment, that this type of transparency will be added. We're looking to build the pipes that make that possible.
100%. And you're already definitely starting on that journey, and it's really incredible to see it all happening. And just chatting a little bit about the Chainlink integration. Do you mind sharing how we worked together on that Carbon Creatures release?
Sure. Yeah. So we worked with Chainlink on two things. The first one was the ability to issue random NFTs when we were selling. So we were selling, or we are selling, a whole bunch of NFTs associated with Cartagena, Colombia, and the mangrove restoration and cleanup of the bay. It's a partnership actually with the city. And when you buy an expensive turtle or other kind of NFT to support that project, you can get airdropped randomly based on the Chainlink's randomization functions. You can get randomly issued an NFT for a turtle egg, and 1 in 1,000 turtle eggs will turn into a turtle. And it just so happens that 1 in 1,000 turtle eggs in real life turns into a turtle that's actually swimming in the ocean. So turtles lay a lot of eggs on the beach, and most of them don't survive to maturity. So we figured that was a nice match, and we used Chainlink for that randomization as well. And we'd really like to get into some other data that we can offer as an oracle associated with carbon biomass measurements and so forth. So we're thinking about some of that stuff that we can do with Chainlink to make it available within the Web3 environment.
Yeah, very cool.
Can I just add one other thing, as long as we're in this sort of self-promotion mode? There's a lot of NFTs out there that talk about giving to charity or supporting climate change and so forth. And I think that's great. I think there's a couple ways to do that. One way is just to say, we're going to take 1 or 2%, some very small amount, or the actual amount associated with the carbon footprint, and offset your carbon footprint. That's great. That's a super thing to do. It's your responsibility to be as carbon neutral as you can. Others do it for other reasons. They give to charity, and others are talking about NFTs as a means of carbon offsetting more generally. But when you look at the finer print, what percentage of the revenue is actually going to carbon offsetting? And we make it possible to do up to 85% of the total NFT sales as carbon offsets. And we're also building some primitives, compostable primitives, that will have even lower percentages of fees, like as little as 5% fees for a relatively generic carbon butterfly that would have 1 kilogram of carbon, and you could buy 5 of those to offset a cup of coffee at point of sale.
So I think, I mean, from what you're saying, it sounds like there's a lot of tangible things people can do to even just get involved and also drive positive impact. So, just to distill everything down for the viewers, like if they were to be able to do like one thing to move in the right direction from kind of this sustainable focus, from your point of view, like what's that first step?
Well, I'm going to self-promote here again. I think the simplest thing to do is to take some percentage of your NFT sales and do a carbon creature airdrop. Any price you want, any number that you want, any amount of carbon that you want. We can set it up for you so that you can airdrop the equivalent of a carbon negative NFT along with all of your sales. Or we could do it randomly using Chainlink. But that's like a really, really simple thing to do. If you want to offset the carbon emissions associated with your business, you can airdrop carbon negative NFTs. They're really easy to build, and we'd be happy to help you create artwork that meets your needs, simple or complicated. We can make them engaging, or we can make them super simple so that all someone sees is this has, 27 kilograms of carbon or 1.2 tons of carbon, and underneath it in the trait data are the certificates and links to the registries. It's so easy.
Cool. Yeah, and just to make it easy for people, where can they find you as we wrap up here? Because clearly there's a lot to unpack. So trying to figure out the best way to find them.
So carboncreatures.com, that's where we're trading, and on OpenSea and crypto.com. But also meta-carbon.com is our corporate site. There's a little bit of information there about some of the more complex brand engagement projects that we can develop with you for your clients. If nothing else, I'd love an advertising agency to come to me as a result of this and say, hey, let's work out something super creative for one of our brands so that we can, leverage the intersection of the metaverse, NFTs, brand marketing, and environmental stewardship into one really cool marketing campaign for a cool customer.
That's awesome. And as we close out, what's going on the roadmap for metacarbon? Any last things you want to share with the community?
Sure. Well, I guess we do have one big announcement, which is that we just closed a round of financing with Animoca Brands. And as you know, they're big lead investors in Sandbox and Decentraland, and they've got more than 100 different partners from Web3 and blockchain in general. And we're really looking forward to trying to integrate carbon primitives across their entire ecosystem. If you're building, magical suits of armor and you want them to be carbon negative, then we want to give you the half a kilogram, the 10 grams of carbon that you need in order to make your magic dagger or your enchanted armor carbon negative. And if you run Grand Theft Auto and you'd like your audience to be able to take their silverback gorilla for a ride shotgun in your car in Grand Theft Auto, call me. Our gorillas are fully rigged for animation. They could be in there. That would be fun.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, no, honestly, Tom, always a pleasure talking to you. I feel like I learn so much every time. Super educational. And in general, everything Metacarbon and Carbon Creatures is creating is going to be really impactful for the world. So thank you so much for coming on today and joining us with Chainlink Q&A.
Thanks, Aggie. Thanks, Harris.
Yeah. So as mentioned, we will see you again soon. Zaji and Harris coming from Chainlink Labs, Tom from Metacarbon, and we're really looking forward to seeing you all again. Thanks, everyone.